Why would a young Hafiza of the Quran trade her soul for beauty? What happened in that hammam in Fez will chill you. Listen until the end because this story could save your life. Layla al-Maghribi was always known in the Medina of Fez as the young woman with sad eyes. At 19, she had memorized the entire Quran by 15. Her prayers echoed through the silent dawns of the Al-Qarawiyyin Mosque, and her devotion was admired by the entire religious community. Her teachers called her the Angel of Recitation, as her melodious voice made even the hardest hearts moved during prayers. But when she looked at herself in the old bronze mirror in her simple room, Layla saw only imperfections that tormented her, the dark skin that modern society rejected in favor of lighter tones, the curly hair that always escaped from her hijab no matter how much she tried to tame it, the nose she considered too wide for the beauty standards she saw in magazines and social media. Subhanallah, Allah created us in His perfect image, her grandmother Khadija would repeat whenever she noticed her granddaughter looking at herself with disgust in the mirror, but Layla couldn't see that divine perfection in herself. The pressure was constant and suffocating. On social media, she saw light-skinned girls receiving thousands of likes and passionate comments, while her own photos rarely exceeded 50 interactions, most from relatives out of politeness. The suitors who came to her family's house to ask for her hand always found polite excuses after seeing her. "She's too religious for me," or "I'm looking for someone more modern," were the justifications that reached Layla's ears through whispered conversations between her mother and neighbors. One cold December morning, after a particularly painful rejection, a young engineer who didn't even have the courtesy to get to know her better before declining, Layla cried throughout the entire Fajr prayer. Her salty tears fell on the prayer rug embroidered by her great-grandmother, while she whispered between sobs, "Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, why did you make me like this? Why can't I be beautiful like the other daughters of Adam?" What Layla didn't know was that her desperate tears had been heard, but not only by Allah. In the dark days that followed the last matrimonial rejection, Layla began to question her faith in ways she never imagined possible. During the obligatory Fajr prayers, her mind wandered to thoughts that embarrassed her. If Allah truly loves me, why did He make me like this? Why do other girls receive beauty as a gift, while I struggle to find someone who even looks at me with genuine interest? These thoughts terrified her, as she knew they were on the verge of blasphemy, but she couldn't stop them. Her mother, Fatima, a wise woman who had raised 5 daughters, immediately noticed the change in her youngest daughter's behavior. "Habibti, you haven't been reciting the Quran with the same passion as always," she commented delicately after a particularly mechanical and lifeless evening memorization session. "I'm fine, Mama," Layla lied, avoiding her mother's perceptive gaze, but both knew it wasn't true. The nur that had always radiated from Layla's face during recitations had gone out, replaced by a melancholy that worried the entire family. The social pressure was constant and relentless, like the Sahara sun. At her cousin Aisha's luxurious wedding the following week, Layla observed from a corner how all the male gazes turned magnetically to the bride, with skin clear as milk and silky hair that fell in perfect waves. The whispered comments from the aunts didn't go unnoticed by Layla's sharp ears. What a shame our Layla didn't inherit the beauty from the maternal side of the family. Maybe she should try some modern treatments. They say they work miracles nowadays. In my time, there were ancient Berber recipes that transformed any face. Each word was like a needle in Layla's already wounded heart. It was that suffocating January afternoon, walking through the labyrinthine streets of the Fez market, with a heart heavy as lead, that destiny conspired to change her life forever. Lost in melancholic thoughts, Layla accidentally bumped into an elegant woman with penetrating green eyes like liquid emeralds. The stranger wore a French silk hijab embroidered with golden threads that seemed to move on their own when the Mediterranean light touched them. Her face was of a disturbing beauty, too perfect, as if it had been sculpted by an obsessive artist. She exuded a perfume that seemed to hypnotize everyone around, Damascene roses mixed with spices that Layla couldn't identify, but that awakened ancestral memories she didn't have, and that made her feel both nostalgia and inexplicable terror. "Forgive me, Ukhti," Layla murmured, lowering her eyes in shame for the accident. "You're the Hafiza from the Al-Andalus neighborhood, aren't you?" asked the woman with a melodious voice that echoed strangely, as if coming from a very deep well. "I'm Sultana Zahra. I have a very special hammam for exceptional young women like you." Layla raised her eyes, confused and slightly alarmed. How did this complete stranger know who she was? Fez wasn't a small city where everyone knew each other, especially in the ancient Medina with its thousands of inhabitants. "Young women like me?" she asked with a hesitant voice. "Young women abundantly blessed with inner beauty, but who unnecessarily suffer with matters of outer beauty." Sultana smiled, revealing perfectly white teeth that shone like pearls at the bottom of the ocean. "Come visit me tomorrow after Maghrib prayer. Al-Andalus Street number 33. Ask for Hammam al-Jamal. Don't worry about payment. For someone special like you, it will be my gift." Before Layla could formulate any response or ask questions about how the woman knew her, Sultana disappeared among the bustling market crowd like dissipating smoke, leaving only the persistent aroma of roses and something deeper, something that made Layla's heart race strangely and her thoughts become confused. The following night, after a particularly distracted Maghrib prayer, Layla found herself standing like a statue before an imposing cedar wood door, carved with intricate geometric patterns. Al-Andalus Street was strangely silent for that time of day, as if the world itself had paused its breath. Not even the call of street vendors or the usual traffic noise could be heard. A discreet polished bronze plaque said in classical Arabic and French, "Hammam al-Jamal, transformation guaranteed or your money back." Her hands trembled visibly as she raised her fist to knock on the door. A young woman of apparently 16 years old answered almost instantly, as if she had been waiting on the other side. She had skin clear as Chinese porcelain, almond-shaped eyes of an impossible blue for a Moroccan, and a beauty that seemed artificial, almost like an expensive doll. "I am Yasmin," said the girl with a strangely monotone voice, without any emotion. "Sultana Zara is specifically waiting for you." The interior of the hammam was different from any other Layla had known in her 19 years of life in Fez. Intricate mosaics of impossible colors decorated the curved walls, but the geometric patterns seemed to move subtly when she wasn't looking directly at them. Perfumed wax candles floated without apparent support in the humid air, their flames dancing without wind. The steam that emerged from the hot water pools formed ethereal figures that whispered incomprehensible words in languages that seemed anterior to Arabic itself. "Bismillah-ir-Rahman-ir-Rahim," Layla murmured automatically, feeling a shiver run down her spine when the sacred words seemed to echo louder than should be possible. "Ahlan wa sahlan habibti," said Sultana, emerging from the shadows like an elegant ghost wrapped in perfumed vapors. "You came because Allah heard your deepest supplications and decided to respond." Layla hesitated, frowning. Something in that phrase sounded fundamentally wrong, almost blasphemous. Allah didn't work through mysterious hammams and women who appeared out of nowhere. I just want to understand why I'm like this," she admitted with a weak voice. "Because you haven't yet discovered your true divine potential," responded Sultana, circling Layla slowly like a predator studying its prey with calculating eyes. 3 sacred sessions, dear child. Just 3 encounters, and you will unquestionably be the most beautiful in the entire kingdom of Morocco. Men will cross deserts to contemplate your face." The first session began innocently, with prolonged steam baths infused with essential oils that smelled intensely of jasmine and something darker, older, something that made Layla remember ancient cemeteries and forgotten rituals. Sultana massaged Layla's skin with an oily mixture that burned slightly to the touch, whispering melodic words that definitely weren't classical Arabic, weren't Berber, nor French. They were something anterior to human languages themselves. "Relax completely, Habibti," Sultana murmured with a hypnotic voice. "True transformation always requires some sacrifice." When Layla finally looked in the ornate polished bronze mirror after the treatment, her reflection seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second before imitating her movements. For a terrifying moment, she saw a version of herself with skin golden as honey and clearer, more seductive eyes. She blinked quickly, and the reflection returned to normal, but a feeling of unease persisted. "It's perfectly normal," said Sultana calmly, noticing Layla's obvious confusion. "True and eternal beauty always struggles to emerge against the limitations of the current body." In the second session a week later, the changes were unquestionably more visible and dramatic. Layla's skin was several shades lighter, her facial features more defined and symmetrical, her hair less rebellious. But there was a terrible price being paid. During her daily obligatory prayers, the sacred words of the Quran began to escape from her memory like sand slipping through fingers. Verses she had recited perfectly 1,000 times now fled from her mind like frightened ghosts. During Fajr prayer, Layla found herself stuttering in passages she had known since childhood. "I'm losing my Quran memorization," she confessed to Sultana, with tears of panic in her eyes. 19 years of study and it's disappearing. "Ancient and limited knowledge leaves so that new divine beauty can enter," responded Sultana, without showing the slightest concern or surprise. "It's a temporary and necessary process." But Layla knew intuitively that Sultana was deliberately lying. Each sacred Arabic word she forgot was immediately replaced by sinister whispers in an unknown language that burned her throat when she tried to pronounce it, as if she were swallowing embers. On the third fateful night, while heading to the hammam with reluctant steps, Yasmin intercepted her and pulled her to a dark corner of the corridor. "Flee from here immediately," the girl whispered, with desperate urgency, her eyes revealing deep and ancient terror. "Before it's too late for your soul. I was exactly like you 3 years ago." "3 years? But you clearly look like you're only 16 years old. Always 16, always beautiful, always empty inside." Yasmin touched her own chest where her heart should be pulsing. "She stole my soul in the 3rd session. Now I'm just a beautiful shell wandering without purpose." Pure horror took hold of every cell in Layla's body when she understood the magnitude of the truth. Sultana wasn't human, the transformations weren't cosmetic or medical, and she was dangerously close to completing the evil ritual that would condemn her for all eternity. "Sultana!" she screamed, bursting into the main room with her heart racing. "What are you really? Tell me the truth." The elegant woman laughed with a cackle that echoed through the walls like shattering glass, and her human form began to distort grotesquely. The apparently perfect skin came undone like a melting wax mask, revealing a terrifying creature of liquid fire and dancing shadows, with eyes that burned like 2 coals from hell. "I am Zahara al-Mutakabira, firstborn daughter of Iblis, millennial jinn of vanity and pride." Her voice now echoed like thunder reverberating in a deep cave. "For 1,000 earthly years, I feed on stolen beauty, corrupted faith, precious souls that trade the eternal for the ephemeral." The room transformed completely around her like a nightmare materializing. The beautiful mosaics revealed themselves to be faces of previous prisoners, dozens of young women frozen eternally in the walls, their mouths open in silent screams of eternal agony. Yasmin wasn't the only victim. Hundreds of girls from different eras wandered through the hammam like ghosts, all trapped between life and death, their souls sucked to feed the jinn's artificial beauty and power. "You voluntarily invoked me with your bitter tears of vanity," continued Zahara with cruel satisfaction. "You consciously rejected Allah's perfect creation and asked for mundane improvements. Now, complete the final ritual and join my eternal daughters of beauty." Layla was completely paralyzed between 2 impossible choices: accept her current natural appearance and live as she always had, rejected and lonely by superficial society, or complete the demonic ritual and obtain the extraordinary beauty she had always desperately desired, but lose her immortal soul in the process. The jinn extended an ornate, pure gold cup filled with a liquid that shone like liquid stars captured from the night sky. "Drink from this sacred potion, and wake up tomorrow as the most beautiful and desired woman in all of Morocco," she offered with a seductive voice. "Refuse this gift and leave here now. But never forget for the rest of your miserable life what could have been." Layla's hands trembled violently as she held the heavy cup. The mysterious liquid smelled intensely of fresh roses and whispered promises of eternal love. She could see her reflection on the shining surface, but it wasn't her current and imperfect face. It was the face she had always dreamed of possessing. Skin clear as milk, delicate features like an ancient Arab princess, eyes that would make powerful men kneel in adoration. "Why do you still hesitate foolishly?" provoked Zahara with growing impatience. "Your own family whispers about your inadequate appearance. Your suitors flee as if they were being chased by demons. Even Allah seems to have completely forgotten to bless you with beauty." In that crucial and definitive moment, Layla heard a familiar and beloved voice echoing in her memory, her grandmother Khadija reciting the sacred verse she always repeated, "And it was He who created you, gave you harmonious form and perfected your forms, and to Him you will be conducted." The memory returned like a ray of divine light, her wise grandmother patiently explaining that true and lasting beauty comes from the sacred nur we radiate when we are sincerely connected with Allah, not from the superficial physical appearance that so obsesses the modern and corrupted world. "Allah makes no mistakes," she remembered her grandmother's words. You are exactly as he wanted you to be. Fa'tikyontan das hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, Layla whispered with a trembling but determined voice, and the powerful jinn recoiled instantly as if she had been burned by red-hot iron. Suddenly, understanding the immense spiritual power she possessed, Layla raised her voice with renewed courage. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. The jinn screamed in supernatural agony, her monstrous form writhing in unbearable pain. You cannot resist me forever. I will torment you until you accept my offer. But Layla had already made her final and irrevocable decision. With a decisive movement, she threw the golden cup on the stone floor, where it shattered into thousands of bright pieces. I choose Allah over my selfish vanity. I choose my eternal soul over empty and temporary beauty. I choose to be his imperfect creation, rather than an artificial perfection of the demon. Inspired by a divine force she had never felt before, she began to recite Ayat al-Kursi with a powerful voice, each Arabic word echoing through the cursed hammam like spiritual hammers. Each sacred verse she had forgotten returned with multiplied force like celestial soldiers returning for a final battle against evil. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum. The hammam walls began to crack deeply, releasing the imprisoned souls in explosions of golden light. Yasmin and hundreds of other young women disappeared in luminous particles, finally free after decades or centuries of imprisonment. The jinn, drastically weakened by the sudden loss of her prisoners, begged desperately, "Just one drop of the potion. A small improvement. No one ever needs to know." "But Allah would know," responded Layla with unwavering firmness, continuing her sacred recitation with an increasingly stronger voice. With a last scream that cracked all the hammam windows and made birds flee in terror, Zahara al-Mutakabira was sucked into a violent whirlwind of fire and shadows, definitively banished back to the infernal depths from where she had emerged. Layla woke up in the Al-Qarawiyyin mosque, where Imam Abdallah had found her unconscious during the communal Fajr prayer. Her skin had completely returned to its original dark tone. Her curly hair escaped from the hijab as it always had, but something had changed fundamentally and irreversibly in her essence. Her eyes now shone with an inner spiritual light that didn't exist before the ordeal. When she smiled genuinely, she illuminated the entire environment around her. When she recited the Quran, her voice carried a spiritual depth and purity that moved even the hardest and most skeptical hearts. People began to notice the transformation immediately. "There's something different about Layla," the neighbors commented, "a special light that wasn't there before." 3 months after the hammam incident, a completely different suitor arrived from all the previous ones. Omar al-Fassi, a brilliant young engineer who had studied architecture in France, but maintained his strong and unwavering Islamic faith. When he met Layla during the formal family visit, he said something she would never forget. "I've never seen anyone so truly beautiful." Layla was confused and a bit suspicious. "But I'm exactly the same as always." "No," smiled Omar with crystalline sincerity. "You shine from the inside out with a light that comes directly from Allah. It's the kind of beauty that ages like fine wine, that deepens with wisdom, that eternally reflects divine light." The traumatic but transformative experience didn't affect only Layla, but inspired her entire community in unexpected ways. She began giving weekly lectures for young Muslim women about the real dangers of physical beauty obsession and the fundamental importance of self-esteem based on solid spiritual values. "The modern beauty industry wants you to believe that Allah made serious mistakes when creating you," she said with passion in her packed lectures. "But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never makes mistakes. We are exactly as He wanted us to be, to fulfill our unique purpose." Her personal story spread quickly through international Muslim social networks, not as a folkloric legend, but as a real and current testimony of the spiritual dangers of trading our divine essence for superficial external validation. Yasmin, the real Yasmin, who had been miraculously freed when Layla broke the ancestral curse, also survived the incident. She sought out Layla a few months later, now with her true age of 22, and became her best friend and dedicated companion in the mission to warn other vulnerable young women. "You saved me," said Yasmin in tears during their first meeting after liberation. 3 lost years, but Allah gave me a second chance through your courage." But the spiritual battle hadn't completely ended. Lesser jinn, still fed by constant human vanity, continued whispering insidiously through social media, invasive cosmetic advertisements, digital filters that distort our perception of reality. Layla learned to recognize these subtle but dangerous whispers. You're not beautiful enough to be loved. You need to lighten your skin to be accepted. Those hair should be straight. That nose is disproportional. Every time she heard these demonic whispers, in herself or in other young women she counseled, she immediately responded with powerful dhikr, Subhanallah walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. Her life became a constant spiritual jihad against the devastating fitna of vanity, using the spiritual weapons Allah had granted her: unwavering faith, supportive community, self-esteem based on eternal spiritual values, and the deep understanding that we are infinitely more than our temporary bodies. At the end of this extraordinary journey, Layla understood that she had received exactly the transformation she really needed. Not in external and superficial appearance, but in the eternal soul. Her perceived ugliness had been the divine catalyst for a spiritual beauty that no jinn could ever steal or corrupt. She married Omar in a simple but deeply meaningful ceremony, where all the women present commented on her extraordinary nur, the spiritual light that radiated from the bride. In the wedding photographs, Layla didn't look like an international magazine model, but emanated genuine happiness and inner peace that made all other women present pale in comparison. Her first daughter was born 2 years later, with the same dark skin and curly hair characteristic of the family. When she held her in her arms for the first time, she whispered with tears of gratitude, "My perfect princess, you are exactly as Allah wanted you to be. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." Years later, the old Hammam al-Jamal had been transformed into a community clinic where Layla and other spiritually mature women offered Islamic therapy for young people struggling with serious self-esteem problems and social pressures. Above the main entrance, a plaque in classical Arabic and French said, "True beauty comes from Allah, not from deceiving jinn." But Layla's story serves as an eternal and urgent reminder. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages that we are not enough, that we need to alter our appearance to be worthy of love, we need to firmly remember that Allah created us exactly as He wanted us to be. The insidious fitna of beauty continues whispering in our ears through every advertisement, every digital filter, every plastic surgery promoted as a necessary improvement. But armed with solid faith, loving community, and spiritual self-knowledge, we can effectively resist these demonic whispers and embrace our divine perfection. Because in the end, those who trade their immortal soul for temporal beauty always discover they paid an infinitely greater price than anything they received in return, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.